Okay, look, I already know what a lot of y'all are gonna say.
Memphis has way too much crime.
Nashville is way better. There's nothing in better. Buy a bulletproof vest if you're moving to Memphis. You are beautiful.
Oh, that last one actually might have been meant for. But those are the comments I see on other videos talking about comparing Memphis and Nashville. And obviously, Nashville has a ton of great stuff going for it. That's why it has grown so much over the last several years. But that's also why Memphis might be poised to be the next city to really boom, especially with a lot of things that Memphis has going for it that Nashville just doesn't, or at least it doesn't anymore. Maybe it did 5 or 10 years ago. And that's why in this video, I want to tell you why, maybe for some of you, Memphis might be the better choice, especially as we go over the next few years, seeing what's going to happen. So stick around for that if that's what you want to see. If this kind of stuff gives you value, you want to see more of it, make sure you do hit that subscribe button and click the bell. You get to see more videos as we do more like this and do more where we get out and show you all the areas around the Memphis metro area. And of course, if you are thinking about making a move to the area, or maybe if you are after this video, take a second, take down this number, call, text, email, whatever it takes, get in touch with us so we can help you out. We keep you from singing the blues on your move to the home of the blues here in Memphis. Now, believe it or not, these cities do actually have a pretty good bit in common. And I want to go over how they're similar and just some basic things about them before we get into the differences, where that's really, I think that's going to make the decision for you. First off, the core cities, if you look at those, they're actually not too different in size. Nashville is now a little bit bigger population-wise, but they're both right under 700,000 or a little over in that range, depending on how up-to-date statistics are that you're looking at. But that's the size of the core cities only. That's not the whole metro area. And if you look at the whole metro area, Nashville is over 2 million, while Memphis is close to about 1.3 to 1.4 million for the entire metro area. So even though they may look similar, when you look at those core cities, you are getting a good bit smaller metro area in Memphis compared to Nashville. And just the Nashville sprawl is a lot bigger. That area has spread out so much. It can take over an hour to get from downtown Nashville kind of to the edge of what you would consider the metro area, where Memphis it's probably more like 35-40 minutes to get really kind of way out in the country from downtown Memphis. And that's probably going to feel a lot worse once you start factoring in the traffic that you're going to have to deal with in Nashville versus the really generally much lighter traffic that you're going to have in Memphis. So how are these two cities similar? Well, they're only 3 hours apart, so the weather in both of these areas is going to be fairly similar. It's about the same. Nashville sits a little bit farther north than Memphis, so maybe you get a little bit more snow in the summer, because we don't get a ton of that really hardly at all. I mean, every once in a while you do get some. I'd say every year you get a very little bit. Nashville does get a little bit more of that, but they're both going to have hot, humid summers. We're still pretty much in the South. And since, like I said at the beginning, I know a lot of y'all are going to call out the crime problem here in Memphis. Yes, we do have a crime problem. If you look online, Memphis will show up near the top of a lot of the most dangerous cities list. But again, that is really focused on that core city, not so much the metro area. And even within the city of Memphis, there are areas where you don't see a lot of crime and areas where you do. That's why in a lot of our videos, I will provide the link down in the description, and it's down there for this one, to the tool that the city of Memphis gives you, where you can see when and where all the crime is actually happening. But now, to be fair, Nashville has also had a little bit of a rising crime problem in the city of Nashville. And on one of those same lists that had Memphis at the top, Nashville was down at number 41 of a list of most dangerous cities, which, check my notes here, makes it less dangerous than New Orleans and more dangerous than Fort Smith, Arkansas. Both have what I would consider to be pretty questionable drivers. Memphis, we talk about them all the time, just speeding around 240 in other parts of town. Where in Nashville, I don't know if it's so much the speed. Maybe if you live in Nashville, you can tell me. As a matter of fact, if you disagree with me, if you got things you can add, anything like that, drop that down in the comments, because I definitely want to know, and the people watching this video want to know. But the last time I was in Nashville, I don't know what it was. I felt like people were just driving all over the place. I mean, going on the other side of the road and then coming back. It was just the Wild West as far as driving in Nashville. So both questionable, although I think I can prefer the Memphis drivers, because at least they stay in the right lane most of the time. So you do have that going on here for Memphis, but still pretty similar. And neither one of these cities really have a very robust public transportation system to help you avoid those crazy drivers. And you will have some bus networks, really in those core cities, but once you expand into the broader metro areas, it just kind of falls apart. As far as schools, there's not a lot to compare there, because both schools, when you're in the core cities, they're not rated as highly when you go to these websites like Great Schools or niche.com. But then you go into the suburbs of both, and you get much higher rated schools, so that's going to be pretty similar between both of those. You do have a lot of musical history in both cities, obviously more country in Nashville, more blues, rock and roll in Memphis, and both of these cities, maybe this is why you're looking at either one of them, will benefit from the fact that you have no state income tax here in Tennessee. But now we get into the differences where things are going to really start to separate them apart. And obviously, like I said, Nashville has had a ton of growth. They've had a lot of things come to Nashville. Nashville is still growing. I'm not saying Nashville's not going to grow. Don't get me wrong. Don't argue with me on that in the comments. Trust me, I believe you, Nashville is going to grow more. But Memphis is going to grow in ways that it really has not recently, and we're already seeing that. There's a reason I wore my Ford shirt today, because we've got Ford Blue Oval City, and that in itself is a big deal, but there's tons of other businesses coming around that, and that's sitting right here on the edge of the Memphis Metro area. And then that's probably the biggest single thing, but there's tons of other investments and things coming into the Memphis market that are giving it that potential to really take off in the next few years. Now, really getting into the differences that set these two metro areas apart, and I've kind of broken these down for you in different categories as well. The first of which being the culture and diversity of these regions. Now, you would think, yeah, we're only about 3 hours apart. We're both in Tennessee. How different can it really be? But if you look in a few different places here, as far as diversity, you can pull up censusreporter.org and you can see vastly different numbers there of just the makeup of these metro cities. But then also the history and the culture. Nashville, it kind of grew up as Music City around the Grand Ole Opry. That's been there for a very long time, and it's also kind of more culturally tied to the Appalachia region, I feel like, than it is, the Deep South. Whereas Memphis, you're kind of the start of the Mississippi Delta, and in my experiences, that southern hospitality that you think of in maybe Mississippi definitely extends up across that Tennessee state line into the Memphis area, and you get a very warm and friendly, inviting people, I feel like, that I run into here in Memphis. And not to say that people are unfriendly up in Nashville, I just don't think you get it quite as much. We refer to this area as the Mid-South. It's definitely tied, in my opinion, more closer to the Deep South than it is really to what you find in Middle and Eastern Tennessee. So it's just a lot different there, and you can't really think about Memphis history without the major role that it played in the civil rights movement as well. And there's just a ton more, and there's tons of places you can go downtown, museums where you can check this stuff out. You can look it up online. And then again, country music in Nashville, blues, soul, rock and roll here in Memphis. So it's just a different vibe between these two cities. And that difference extends to more than just the people of the area. It's also really the terrain and the topography of these different regions, because, here in Memphis, obviously, like I said, we're the start of the Mississippi Delta here. We're right on the Mississippi River. So it's very flat. You don't have a lot of, big hills, or definitely not mountains or anything like that. But as you get out into Nashville, you get a lot more hilly and almost somewhat mountainous, and obviously more so as you go more towards East Tennessee. And so it's just a lot. It's just, when you get into Memphis versus getting into Nashville, it's just a totally different feel. And Memphis also feels a lot more old school. Nashville has had a lot more modern growth. So you got a lot of the bigger, newer high rises, where in Memphis, you still have some high rises, but they are older historic buildings, not new glass and steel buildings like a lot of what you would find up in Nashville. Now, in terms of the sheer number of things to do, Nashville is obviously going to be the clear winner, except for maybe one area of exception, and that'd be personal preference. But just the sheer number of things to do. Obviously, you've got the NFL, you've got the Titans, you've got the Predators, you've got baseball, you've got soccer, you've got NASCAR coming to the super speedway. There's pretty much all kinds of stuff, and even outside of pro sports, you've got SEC football there with Vandy. So there's just a lot of things to do in Nashville, and obviously, in addition to all the music and things, the live music on Broadway, and the endless amount of bachelorette parties that you will encounter. And I swear, the last time I went to Nashville, I think in one day we saw at least 25, maybe 30 different bachelorette party groups, and there's probably a lot more. I mean, that's just what I came across. But if you want to have a bachelorette party, definitely go to Nashville, I think. But actually, I take that back. Yeah, I've seen a few in Memphis, and it's a lot less crowded. There's a lot of similar things to do. So maybe if you're thinking about doing your bachelorette party in Nashville, maybe consider Memphis for that as well. But yes, tons to do there in Nashville. But there's also a lot to do in Memphis. I don't want to downplay that at all. We do have Beale Street. We've got a different vibe of music, but we still got live music here. A lot of good times we had there. And you know, we also have baseball here. We've got the Memphis Redbirds, and we've got some beautiful parks. We're on the Mississippi River, so it's a lot of stuff to see. We have a giant pyramid sitting right down there on the river, and in that pyramid is where the Memphis Grizzlies used to play. And that's right, y'all, Memphis is a basketball city, so if you like some basketball, it's a clear choice. Memphis is the choice here, because not only do you have the Memphis Grizzlies, you've also got the University of Memphis here, and you know, not just basketball, their football program is on the come up too. So there are things to do here in Memphis as well, in kind of some of the same categories. And you know, also if you don't really like country music, we got you covered here in Memphis. We got what you want. So you know, again, a lot of this is personal preference, sheer volume of things to do. Yes, Nashville. But you know, but depending on what you want, maybe you like the things to do in Memphis, or maybe you like the fact that it's just not quite as crowded as it can get up there on Broadway in Nashville. But now we're getting into the big ones, the things that really set this apart. First off is income. We're getting into the money, y'all. Surprisingly, when you look at the whole metro areas, now if you look at the core cities, the discrepancy here is a lot bigger. But if you look at the entire metro areas, and this is coming from, again, censusreporter.org, the median household income for Memphis is $55,840, while Nashville is at $64,857. So Nashville obviously more, but then you go look at the cost of living, go to bestplaces.net. Nashville is 6.5% higher than the national average. This national 6.5% higher, while Memphis is 13.9% lower. So that is a big difference. It's a lot more than the difference in that income. So your money, you know, maybe on average you make a little bit less in Memphis, but your money is going to go a whole lot farther. And there are a lot of high paying jobs in Memphis, like I said, with all the growth coming, like with the Blue Oval, like with everything else. And there's just a lot of that. We talk to these people, we help them, we bring them in. And again, if that's you, I'll put it up here again. You can text, if you missed it the first time, take down that number, call us, text us, email us. Look, we love making these videos. I actually really enjoy it. We're about to get out and make a whole lot more. Again, subscribe as well if you want to see those. But even more than I love that, when we get to help y'all make that move here to the Memphis area, it's so much better. And if you're kind of deciding the other way, you think Nashville's for you, still hit me up, because I got a contact up there too. I can hook you up, make sure that you get taken care of up there as well. But yeah, your money's gonna go a lot farther here in Memphis, and you actually might be surprised. Maybe you work remote. You can make the same in either city, and that money's going to go farther in Memphis. And then lastly here, the biggest one out of that cost of living is going to be your housing costs. And the housing market in Nashville has been crazy up there over the last couple years. Now, it's been pretty wild here in Memphis too, but you've seen ridiculous appreciation up there in Nashville, but you're also seeing some of that come back down a pretty good bit as well. So it's fluctuated a lot. And if you bought a year ago and your home value has dropped 20%, that's pretty tough, especially if you decide, I don't really like it here anymore, or I got a job opportunity to take me somewhere else. You're kind of stuck with that house if it's dropped down that much in value. Where in Memphis, we did come up a pretty good bit, not as much as Nashville. We're still much more affordable than Nashville, but our values here have kind of gone flat after that, instead of coming back down in the way that they have so much in Nashville. And if anything, it's just become a lot easier to be a buyer here in the Memphis area. In Nashville, I had to talk to somebody. If you want to know, again, I'll hook you up. I don't know exactly some of the finer details of being a buyer in Nashville, but I know in Memphis, it's definitely become a good bit easier here, just in terms of the concessions you might be able to get, or incentives you might be able to get if you're going to new construction, things like that. So yes, it's much easier to buy a house here in Memphis, and it's much more affordable, with the median price here in Memphis being about $212 versus almost $350 up in Nashville. I will say, actually being here on the ground, those are stats from a website. It is hard to find a house in a lot, especially if you're looking in the suburbs, that's going to be at $212. It's going to be move-in ready, but you can find that in some instances. They go quick, but you can find that in some instances. I would say $250 to $300 is going to put you more in the sweet spot in Memphis, whereas Nashville, it's probably going to be a good bit more than that. And if you just look at the low end and the high end of these markets, if you go to like Realtor.com and look at houses in Nashville under $250,000, there's maybe a couple hundred, where there's thousands in the Memphis market under $250,000. Now, a good chunk of those might be investment type properties or things like that, but still, there's tons of options under that price point. And if you go look in Memphis at the reverse of that for houses over $1 million, you won't find a ton of them. They are here. We actually have some really nice properties, in East Memphis and up on the river. But you won't find a ton of those over $1 million here in Memphis. Definitely not over 1.5. But you can find them. Somebody's selling a $40 million house up in Nashville. I don't know who's selling that. I wonder, do you know who's selling that house? I'm curious to know. It almost kind of looks like Graceland, which, hey, we've got Graceland here again. A lot of history here in Memphis, y'all. So that's some of the big differences that are going to be there. Obviously, there's tons more we could talk about between these two cities. But that's the big things I think affecting you on a day-to-day basis. You let me know if you agree, or if there's other things we should have included in here, because it's valuable stuff. I don't know everything. You're out there experiencing it. Especially if you're in Nashville, tell me what you see. If you're here in Memphis, tell me what you see. But if you want to know more about Memphis, if maybe I've piqued your interest, maybe I should consider looking at Memphis. Well, we've done a whole video talking about the pros and the cons of Memphis. I'm going to pop that video up right there. Go check it out, and I'll see you there.